So now we've finished the first 4 limbs of yoga, right? Yama, niyama, asana, and pranayama. This is half of the 8-limbed practice of yoga. And these are all very tangible practices that we can actually intellectualize and record, right? There are specific practices we can do to practice and cultivate yama and niyama. There are specific practices that we can do to master our posture. Pranayama are specific practices we can do. The 5th limb of yoga is a transition. Actually, even pranayama is a transition, but it's still, you can use your intellect to count and quantify it. Whereas the rest of the practices are harder to quantify and measure and be specifically being able to track it. So that's why we call this 5th limb of yoga the transition. As if a tortoise or a turtle withdraws its limbs and goes into the shell. This is the practice of pratyahara, sense withdrawal. If you look and consider the function of your physical senses, the function of your physical senses are for you to be able to explore, make sense of, and provide context to the world around you. This sensory experience of your life and your mind is called manas. And we discovered manas when we spoke about it in Book 1, Sutra 2, the different layers of your consciousness. The sutra, sutra number 54, it reads, when the senses withdraw themselves from the objects and imitate, as it were, the nature of the mind stuff, this is pratyahara. I remember reading the sutra and being like, what now? That makes no sense. How do you even understand it? It's very heady. So let's go really simple and totally to basics. Can you go and sit in the middle of your living room with the TV blaring and your family members bustling about and doing whatever they do and sit in meditation and have a nice experience? Chances are probably not. So you have to withdraw your physical body from all this sensory stimulation and go find somewhere quiet. That is the first step of withdrawing yourself from sensory stimulation, withdrawing the senses. In the beginning of your meditation practice, you might need your senses. You might need to listen to music or listen to a guided meditation. Or if you are using a candle to gaze and keep your concentration and focus, tratakam, and then you close your eyes and you try to hold that reverse image of the flame in your mind's eye, that is called tratakam. You are using your senses. So initially, you can use your senses. You can enhance your sensory experience and then bring it inwards and withdraw yourself. So part of this course, you've been connected to my Meditation for Beginners online course. And that's the first one that you get to. I encourage you to go through those lessons day by day by day. In there, you'll have the Trataka meditation practice, where instead of a candle, I have, because it's a computer screen, I have this black and white image of a yantra. A yantra is a geometric structure like a mandala, but they say that a yantra is a visual representation of a mantra. And in that, you can look at it on your screen and close your eyes, and then you'll get that reverse image of that mandala in your eyes, in your mind's eye. And it is a very nice way to develop that concentration, where you're using your sensory, and then you're withdrawing from your sensory. Now, that particular practice of Trataka actually shows you how withdrawing the senses, the you're withdrawing from the actual objects, and you're imitating, as it were, the nature of the mind stuff. You can hold the image of that yantra in your mind without actually needing the physical object. That's why for beginners, you need a physical object. Direct your senses. It's why that we have places like temples. If you go into a Hindu temple in India, it is a crazy sensory experience. First, you have to take off your shoes and you walk barefoot. Most of the time, you have to walk through a foot bath. And then you're on this cold stone floor, which is very rugged and rigid, but it feels so interesting on your feet. And then there's the smell of incense and camphor. There's the sounds of mantras. You go and you wait in a long line. Everything you look at, there's deities and carvings on the walls. And it's all such a huge sensory experience. And then you go to the main deity and there's flowers and they're dressed in beautiful clothing and they're pouring the milk and they're pouring the water and they're waving a light. And it's all beautiful. It's all very sensory stimulating. It can be very overwhelming. And then at the end, they give you food, something sweet to ignite your taste. What is that doing? It's almost like putting your mind in a way that it's allowed to roam freely within the context of spirituality. So at first, you're controlling your senses in a completely confined area. And your mind is allowed to wander and your senses are allowed to wander in an enclosure. But very slowly and gradually, it goes further and further and further inwards. Have any of you done the lemon meditation where you visualize cutting open a lemon and eating it? Yes? Okay, well, that's also in the Meditation for Beginners online course. I lead a guided one. So please go ahead and try it out on the online course. Because what you will find, what you will discover is just by thinking it, right? I mean, okay, let's forget the lemon. Close your eyes for a moment and think about your favorite thing to eat. Not a healthy thing, the thing that you love to indulge in. Think about eating it, biting into it, whether it's a squidge or a crunch, and feel it swirling around in your mouth. And imagine the smell of it and the texture of it. And as you chew it and swallow it, it goes down your throat and into your stomach, giving you such a feeling of satisfaction. Now, very gently open the eyes. Depending on how vivid your imagination is, some of you might have started to salivate in your mouth, especially because it's coming up to lunchtime. We're all probably getting a little hungry. That is how powerful your mind is. You don't need the object. You don't need the sensory experience. The sense objects withdraw itself and imitate the mind. The mind has the capability of creating that biochemical reaction. So technically, it's a way for you to withdraw from the senses. I actually don't even need to eat the chocolate to have the experience of eating the chocolate. Just by visualizing eating the chocolate, my dopamine receptors are already firing. Everything is firing and I can get that same satisfaction. That's what it means where they withdraw, the senses withdraw from the objects themselves and imitate the mind stuff. You're going inwards. And as you are going inwards and withdrawing your senses and going inside of yourself, then you are applying Yoga Chitta Vritti Nirodha, Then you are applying Pratipaksha Bhavana. You are cleaning out your closet. Chuck, keep, maybe. Let's try again tomorrow. Chuck, keep, maybe. Let's try again tomorrow. And slowly by slowly, it's easier to let go of extra thoughts in your mind, making the mind a less dense, agitated, complicated space and entity. Make sense? Sutra 55. Then follows supreme mastery over the senses. Do you remember supreme non-attachment in book 1, Sutra 16? It was a very difficult concept to grasp all the way back then. But when you look at that process of the 8-limbed path, maybe it makes more sense now. Supreme mastery over the senses. We are conscious that we have mastered any cravings, seen, heard, tasted, felt, smelt. And then we let go of any attachments to the gunas. Heart's desires always happen. The mantra that I opened with today, Om, united with the source, on which the yogis ever dwell. This source grants our desires, and it also liberates us. Salutations to that Omkaram, that source where we come to. Remember the story of the librarian that I shared yesterday? Didn't realize he let go of his desire, the attachment of being a librarian. He went to pursue monastic life, and he still ended up being the librarian at the ashram. Go figure, and he didn't even realize it. This is the crazy thing. He didn't even realize it. He thought he had renounced all his worldly attachments. So the universe will never put to waste any valuable life experience you have, even if those life experiences have been challenging and painful. They're always useful. So when you have supreme mastery over your senses, you can work towards supreme non-attachment. But here, at this stage, we have not fully realized ourself. We have just finished book 2, and now we are going to enter book 3, Vibhuti Pada, the portion on accomplishments. And this brings us to the last 3 of the 8-limbed path of yoga. So before I go into this book 3, there are some other practices of pratyahara that are present in a yoga class. The practice of yoga nidra, doing a body scan and letting go of the body, being aware of the breath, observing and witnessing the breath, observing the mind and witnessing the mind. This is a very guided, directed practice of pratyahara. You're going inwards and inwards and inwards and inwards. So you've mastered your senses. And then you do your pranayama, and then you are fit for concentration and meditation. And the reason why in the integral yoga class, the pratyahara activity comes before the pranayama, because it's not taught in exact succession, is because, again, The breath is so much more tangible to work with than the internal practices. But after you've done all your asana, you're ready to relax and let go. Your entire nervous system goes into relaxation response. You are less agitated. Therefore, it is less likely that you are going to agitate your breath when you're in this floaty, relaxed space. And therefore, you practice your pranayama with a calm, relaxed state, easy to go into meditation.